Good day, everyone. This is Dima Zahir, the Prime Minister. I welcome everyone in here, the great audience that came to see this debate, and also the Judgment Committee that are working with us today. Today we are present the motion of the government that states that this House believes that the rise of the right-wing populism in Europe will escalate the conflict in the Arab region. And as always, I will start with articulating some of the definitions that have appeared in this motion, first of which is the right-wing populism. Speaking a little bit about the right-wing populism, the first definition that I'm going to give you here is that it's a political ideology that rejects the current political consensus and often combines the laissez-faire ethnocentrism and anti-elitism. In another definition that is focusing also on one of the characters of it, which is that it's mainly aimed against the existing state and social system, and that it is an anti-constitutional, which means that it is opposing some undesirable or unwanted elements in the system, unwanted elements referring here to some ethnic or different ethnic groups which are different, and some of these ethnic groups which are rejected by this kind of movement. These kind of movements are the Islamic movements, the Islamic or the groups that are practicing Islam. Actually, people in in the right-wing populism are stressing on the national interests through proclaiming the unity of the nation state as the highest ideological value, where they consider these ethnic groups as a threat to the national identity and also a threat to the national interests of these countries. So to summarize, they are commonly known for opposition to two main things, which are the immigration from the Islamic world, particularly, and also they are opposed also to the European integration, which is that they are always trying to get out of the European Union. This phenomena is called the Euroscepticism, which means that they are always trying to preserve their own national identities through being disengaged with the European Union activities and through exiting the European Union. The other definition that I'm going to It's not a definition actually, but in order to know what conflicts we are speaking about, when we speak about conflicts in the region, we are speaking about either conflicts, wars, civil wars, such as the one that we witness in Libya and Yemen, and also the conflicts that are manifested in bad relations and bad relations between the countries, such as the Syrian and Saudi conflict, for example, or stress in the affairs and the relations. Also, it includes the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And I want to indicate that we are not trying to speculate whether these right movements are going to have greater power or control over the European Parliament. However, we are trying to evaluate the effect of these movements on the Arab states or the Arab region and the Arab countries. Now I will make my first short argument, which says that the right of the extreme right in Europe threatens a sharp civilizational polarization, which is going to enforce radicalism in the Arab region in response to the European radicalism. In this, I mean that if we look at the first example that was set by the right movement, for example, Donald Trump, who started like showing some kind of hostile behaviors and activities towards the foreigners, and especially those coming from the Arab region, for example, and the immigrants from the Arab region, these hostile behaviors towards the other cultures and religions is going to be counteracted and is going to be have a great response on our feeling toward the external sides or toward the European countries. For example, the radicals are going to be more sensitive towards the others, and this is going to be increasing also the intolerance from our side, because if we are opposed by intolerance, then we are going to promote some kind of opposite tolerance in the other side. Now, the other argument that I'm going to present in here is that the rise of the far-right movements in the European parliaments is going to aggravate the economic crisis in the Arab region, and the economic crisis is going to lead to more conflict and more competition amongst the Arabian nations themselves and the conflicts inside these countries. The mechanism by which I propose this is going to happen I don't have time. And yeah, I lost my time. Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mustafa Hashim, and I will be the leader of the opposition for today's debate with the motion that the rise of the right-wing populism in Europe will escalate the conflicts in the Arab region. I will start by rebuttaling with the government opening team. They mentioned Trump, and Trump winning was actually faced by many conservations from the Republicans, and even if he and the European right-wing parties share certain ideas, it doesn't imply that he is a right-wing party representative in the context of our discussion. However, even the most extreme measures adopted by the Trump government had no effect on escalating the foreign conflict. It was all directed against protecting the people of America and the national
POI.
American identity. Sorry. Now let's move to our strategy as an opening opposition. Our strategy is based on two aspects. The first aspect is related to the definition of the right-wing party, which they are nationalists, conservatives, and they tend to think that they shouldn't pay for someone else's education or health service. They believe in freedom of succeed over equality.
POI.
Sorry. Now, the far right-wing parties are parties seeking independence. They refuse any kind of participation that will lead to further damage. They do not want to include any interfering or escalating in the Arab conflicts. Their problems mainly are concerned with the Islamic terrorism, with the refugees, with the globalization, and with the European Union. And they start solving that by calling for leaving the European Union, refusing the refugees, and going back to the conservative traditional community. And this will not increase in any way our conflicts in the Arab region. Now, the second aspect in our strategy is the factors that are limiting their effect in escalating the conflicts in the Arab region, and Tala will talk about it more. Now, this will lead us to our first argument, this will lead us to our first argument. Far right-wing parties are basically taking advantage of our conflicts in the Arab region to rise rather than actually influencing these conflicts. And this comes in the context of the ideologies they are promoting, including conservatism. They are taking advantage of the migrants, whom they are a result of the conflicts in the Arab region, and spreading the propaganda of the influence of these against the welfare and the job opportunities of the European people. And by that, they are steering the general opinion against migrants. They had no influence on the conflict in the Arab region where these migrants came from. On the contrary, they are using these migrants and their problems and their outcomes to rise and gain of their popularity. Another example is which are the direct result of the conflicts in the Arab region is the extremist groups. They are taking advantage of the extremist groups by directing the result of conflicts in the Arab region and spreading the ideas of Islamophobia, considering Muslims as foreigners to the conservative European community, which they are promoting. Now, the evidence of that was clearly the 40% spike in the hate crime rate against Muslims after the nominations and the statements of the far-right France's National Front Party's President Marine Le Pen. In conclusion, they are parties that are calling for closing their borders rather than opening themselves to the world. They do not participate in any kind of conflicts. They only want to close upon themselves and protect their national identity. And this was clearly quoted by Marine Le Pen when she said, Je demandais la restauration immédiate de la frontière nationale et la cessation immédiate de la distribution des migrants de la communauté, which means I call for the immediate restoration of our national borders and equally the immediate cessation of the distribution of migrants in our communities.
POI?
Yes, please.
How do you claim that they don't have anything to do? Who is going to give us, who is supporting us through the financial aid, through the donation? Isn't it the European Central Bank? Is it the International Monetary Fund? Isn't it the World Bank that these decisions are made by the European
Okay.
parliaments? If the parliaments are controlled by these parties,
Okay.
are they going to alienate themselves from their responsibility in the international arena?
Okay.
As you said?
Okay. The deputy of leader opposition will rebuttal you about this topic. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Yusuf Murshid. I'm the Deputy Prime Minister for the team proposition, the government team. And I'm going to start by building on the few arguments that were presented by the Prime Minister over here, by saying that the right nationalists campaigns nowadays, like Brexit, I'm pretty sure that everyone knows what Brexit is, have run on two fundamental ideas currently trending in many Western countries, such as, number one is lifting the poor working class. And I know, by the way, this is not our center point today, but I just had to mention. And point number two is constricting immigration from the Middle East, where, ladies and gentlemen, the erosion of Western culture sparked by the Syrian refugee crisis in the Arab world right now have led to a rise in xenophobia, by the way, which allow me right now to just clarify what xenophobia means, for those who probably don't know what xenophobia means. Intense or irrational dislike for or fear of people from other countries. Which far-right movements have directly capitalized on, referring to xenophobia. So right now I'm going to start by giving lots of examples lots of examples about this issue right now over here. By starting Marine Le Pen, the leader and presidential candidates that the opposing team mentioned. She's the presidential candidate for of the National Front in France, and publicly stated that she's against a multicultural France. And also, she suggested that immigrants should adapt to French cultures. Now, right over here, right now, I would like to recall a major issue or a point over here. By mentioning an example that what Marianne had mentioned previously means that directly that if any one of us right now today was a refugee, Muslim refugee, a Syrian, for example, lady, and she had gone to France, then do you guys believe that she could have to give up her hijab, for example, in order to just accept and embrace a foreign culture methodology? So, this could, directly create a huge conflict in the Arab world. Now, moving forward, Norbert Hofer, the Austrian Freedom Party candidate, defended a platform focused on restricting immigration to Austria to slow what they call Islamification. And this is really a very bad thing, and has a very bad or negative, result, thank you, on the Arab world. And also moving forward, that Geert Wilders, the founder and leader of the Populist Party for Freedom, the PVV, is also running a platform that promises to de-Islamize the Netherlands by closing mosques and limiting Arab refugees' immigration to his country, which is also, a very bad thing. And also, I would like to recall another point right now over here, which is that do you guys know that 90,000 Syrian immigrants entered the Austrian country in 2015? Now, actually, my friend over here said that, the whole conflict of taking over the lead in Europe by the far right movements doesn't or maybe has nothing to do with the Arab countries. Now, actually, what I would like to recall is that did you, my friend, consider? I mean, having consider the 90,000 Syrian immigrants that had entered Austria in 2015. Like, what would happen to them if they did really take over the lead in Europe? Like, did you think, like, just for a moment about the consequences over here? Well, I don't think so. And also, in addition to that, we all need to focus on one thing, that is that Wilder's continuous stance on Islam and Muslims, immigration and globalization are a direct manifestation of the rise of illiberal democracy in Europe, in which no escape from that. Thank you very much.
We would like to start with some of the points that was mentioned by the affirmative team or the government team, which was the fact that in their definition, they mentioned that the right-wing parties are, or they aim to protect the national identity, and they want to protect the national affairs. So this will imply that they have nothing or no actual benefit from interfering with the issues of other countries, including escalating the conflict in the Arab region, because they want to protect their national identity. Moving on to some of the points that was mentioned by them, a multicultural France or a de-Muslimized Netherlands. France and Netherlands, no one mentioned the Arab region. They want to protect their own national identity. They are not implying that they want to protect or escalate the conflicts in the Arab region. This is what we have mentioned in the strategy that we have adopted, is the fact that such parties are nationalist parties. They want to protect their national identity, their national ethnicity, whether they will take someone's hijab or not. I'm sorry, you were passing the time. Regarding whether they take someone's hijab off is not something that will create a huge conflict in the Arab region. Military intervention would do that, which, by the way, most of the far right-wing parties in Europe refuse the military intervention in the Arab world or in the Middle East. So, moving on to the points that we are going to state, which is starting with the strategy, we said that we are going to highlight some of the most important factors that will limit the effect of the far right-wing parties in actually escalating the conflicts in the Arab region. Starting with the proportion that these far right-wing parties are making in the governmental or the government authorities. First of all, according to the European Center of Reform, these far right-wing parties demonstrate about an existence of significance in about 3 or 4 countries only, and I insist on significance. They are present
really
almost.
Good point of
I'm
information.
sorry, in 3 or 4 countries with limited representation in the national and the European parliaments. 3 or 4 countries with limited representation does not imply that they have the ability to escalate the conflicts in the Arab region by affecting any sort of foreign policy. According to the European Center of Reform, we can see very clearly that in UK, in France, and Sweden, they have no participation in the government. And regarding the representation, they only represent 21.1 in their largest portion in Denmark of the national parliament. How would such percentage be able to make an effect on the international policies and be able to influence the conflicts in the Arab region or escalating them? I'm sorry. So we can see that there has been a rise in their popularity over the past 10 years, but this increase in the popularity had no effect on the national affairs, let alone the international ones. Moving on to the second factor is that these, according to the strategy that we have adopted, these parties are oriented towards internal issues and internal factors rather than actually going into details into international affairs and international issues. And you can see clearly from refusing migrants, they are protecting their own identity. They're protecting the welfare of their people, the security, the safety of their people. And you can see also in another example and another argument that we have is the fact that they lack the experience to be able to influence the foreign policies. We can see the example in that in the FPO, the main right-wing party in Austria was unable to, when they ran the Ministry of Defense in one of the years, they were unable to actually actually implement their ideologies and their philosophies to change the Austrian security policy, which because they had no expertise in how to run or utilize the machinery government in implementing their ideas. So even if we assume that they are to escalate the conflicts in the Arab region, they will not be able to do that because they simply have no experience in running errands of the countries, and they will not be able to do such an influence on the foreign policies.
A point of
And
information.
we would like to emphasize again that the issues and the foreign issues and the domain of the foreign issues of the European countries has always been in the hands of the mainstream parties, not the far right-wing parties. So any escalation in the conflicts in the Arab region was run by the mainstream parties, not by the far right-wing parties. They had been unable to do the effect that would actually cause them to interfere and escalate any sort of claimed conflict in the Arab region. So they are nationalist parties. They want to protect their own identity, the European ethnicity. They are not seeking any kind of escalating of any conflict in the Arab region.
Hello all, I am Rahil Barakat. I am the member of opposition. Actually, I insist with what they said. I totally agree with them. First of all, I want to talk about what they said. I want to refute what they said. Actually, for what the leader and the members said, the deputy said, okay, about nationalism, how they want to be nationalist while we are living in a world with economic and political relations between countries. And the second thing for you, for the leader of the government, for Marine Le Pen, she wants to prevent her country from hijab and to close mosques if she won the election. And what's the relationship between this and saving her country? Actually, she is against a religion, and this is not accepted. Anyway.
Point of information.
Later, please. Actually, I agree with them since the far-right wing will raise the economic conflict in the Arab region if they got the power, because the far-right wing is against immigration of Muslims to Europe, which will affect on refugees crisis as in Syria and will make the situation worse. Because they will live in their countries which are dangerous on their innocent souls. On the other hand, they will emigrate to the countries near them as Jordan and Lebanon, which are not rich country. In addition, their power may lead to other bans in the future, as the travel ban by Donald Trump. And for this point, maybe Donald Trump, as what they said, he's not clearly with the far right wing, but he behaving as their ideas. Actually, and that's good. And he encouraged them in Europe to behave the same as him. Okay, so that may lead to possible bans in the future, as the travel ban by Donald Trump for Arab and Muslim countries to America, which is against one of the most important principles of the American Constitution, which is equal protection under the law, regardless of religion. This process may happen in Europe, of course, because Le Pen said that she will do this, and many other candidates. And the world can't bear this process, which is against globalization and the transnationalism. So it will affect not only in the Arab world, but also all the countries around the world. Another possible danger over Arab region countries is related to the foreign aid from Europe to the Arab region countries, since they believe that they must help other countries if this help is supporting their own interest. For example, and according to the Egyptian Institute for Political and Strategic Studies, Donald Trump has been decreased the budget for assistance and subsidies as the United Nations funding the World Bank and many other institutions, which will affect badly in the Arab region country. But at the same time, and that's contradiction actually, Donald Trump wants to keep international relations with the Gulf states. Can you imagine that? As a source of wealth.
Please.
Okay, go ahead.
Can we talk about the right-wing populism in Europe instead of talking about Trump's policies with the Arab region?
Actually, I'm not talking about Donald Trump, but what Donald Trump is doing, they will do. The far right wing will do in their countries in Europe. So it's the same. In Arabic, it's وجهان لعملة واحدة. I'm sorry if I talked in Arabic, but anyway. Therefore, we may reach a day with no relations between countries if that's happened in Europe. Another thing, they will also affect badly in the Arab region since their main goal against Muslims and Islam in itself, and that evidenced by the Party for Freedom leader Geert Wilders in Holland, who pledged if he won the election to not only banning Muslims immigration, but also closing mosques, which is not accepted since religion and worshipping is one of the rights for all the people, regardless of their religion. But so they are working against extremism, not extremism of bad people, but actually against a religion and millions of people because they are not like them. And by this way of thinking, we are sure that they will escalate conflict, while many evidences show far right-wing extremism. For example, thank you.
Okay, good evening, honorable educators, opponents, and members of the audience. As a member of the opposition, I'm here to argue against the motion and to prove to you today that the right and the right wing won't escalate the conflicts in the Arabic region. But before I begin my speech, first, let me respond to some of the points that the member of the government has said. You just keep talking and talking again about Donald Trump and his right-wing parties, and you just never mention the European right wing. No, please. I have a point that the European right wing doesn't have that effect on Arabic regions because, firstly, there is an environment of heated controversy of the EU, and that leads to UK to leave the EU. After that, the disturbances of the relationship between the UK and its allies, especially the US, has been started, okay? But recently, the US considered UK as a weaker and smaller ally that can't be dependent on to supporting the US benefits in Brussels. So you just keep talking and talking about the President Trump.
Point of information.
No, please. My second point is you are just keep also talking about the hijab and Marine Le Pen preventing hijab in France. Well, what have to do with conflicts in the Arabic region?
POI?
Yes, please.
Okay, don't you think that we are all humans and these things affect, especially when, for example, in Germany, when the far-right people in Eastern Germany, they started to do violence over Muslims because of that, and this is not accepted. We are all a human being.
Well, there is a lot of violence in Syria, there's a violence in Iraq, there is also violence in Palestine, and no one has interrupted that. So what happened in Europe is still in Europe.
Point of information.
No, please. I want now to raise my arguments. First of all, amid the refugees crisis in 2015, when more than 1 million asylum seekers from around the Muslim world come streaming into Europe, the European policies start to swing to the right. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the refugees crisis what causes the rise in the right wing. Now, the ideology of these right-wing populists, okay, they are the same. They are anti-immigration, anti-Islam, and national conservatism, just to protect their culture, to protect their economy, to protect their jobs opportunities, okay? They don't care about Muslims in their countries. They just care about their internal issues.
Point of information.
They won't escalate the conflicts. No, please. Now, I told you about the Europe's far right Okay, now I will tell you about one example, which is the Europe's far-right leaders' last conference, which held in Germany in January. Most of their speech were similar,
POI.
and consist of a protection of their border and shut them to Muslim migrants. That show you, ladies and gentlemen, that those parties and the people who support them only concern about their countries and want to escalate the conflict in Islamic world. Eventually, they will directly or indirectly will call for stopping the wars in Arabic countries to decrease the number of refugees from Islamic countries. My second point is that the European right wing doesn't have that effect because first I told you about the disturbance of the relationship between the US and the UK. The second point is, according to American Interest magazine, okay, and other website, the most powerful country in the world is US, obviously, okay? And according to the economy and political forces for decades. And it have a big influence of Arabic region. But the thing is, the American right parties aren't considered part of the European right wing. You are just keeping talking about it, okay? Moreover, it has been noticed that the speech of many leaders of European right wing parties have almost the same xenophobic and Islamophobic rhetoric of Donald Trump, president of the US, and they don't have any effect in the Arabic country. The last point of my speech is, thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Diada, the government web. We are the government team, and we are with the motion which is the far right wing in Europe will escalate the conflict in Arab region, since each member of us shows his and her argument. Firstly, the Prime Minister, who started by defining the topic and showed the strategy of our team and provide his argument by saying how will affect on the immigrations and how it is racial will actually raise the racial conflict. What about the deputy of the Prime Minister, who refuted and rebut most of the ideas of the leader of the opposition and insist his ideas, and the argument were also about immigrations and xenophobia and how will actually raise the conflict and for refugees.
Point of information.
Later. Member of the government. She insisted on the idea from the beginning. She refuted, and she started her argument clearly, which are about the bad consequences, which are about the far right-wing party in Arab region over immigrants and refugees, such as Syrian refugees, and since they are against Islam and Muslims. And also, she shows how will saturate the conflict economically. For example, foreign aid will be prevented if the help does not support their interest. She supported that also with examples. Do you know why Europe and far-right wings parties are against immigration and refugees? Because American and most of the Europe countries are themselves immigrants. Because they actually fear immigrants, they petrified of them, doing to them what they did to the previous inhabitants. Okay. Sorry, conquest by immigration is their tactic, and they don't need it to be used against them. We know that America is the nation of immigrants. Donald Trump or anyone else can't deny that fact, and they don't have the right actually to ban, interrogate them, or kick them out. And now let us talk about the Syrian refugees. You are with the right-wing parties, right? Will they stay? So what will happen with Syrian refugees? Will they stay in their country, in Syria, and see their own beloved ones, kids, mother and father, sister, being killed, robbed, tortured in front of their eyes, and not able to do anything to them? Is that what you want? So, because I believe anyone who is with the right-wing party is not a human. I know they are doing that for the sake of their country, as what the member of the government said, but they are not terrorists. They are running away from the hell to country they can feel safe, not to kill, not to bomb the country that welcomed them. the thing that I don't understand is why we have parties against human. Actually, tell me because we don't tell me because we should be a democratic state and we have to exercise the freedom to express our voice and our views and our voice can be heard. Because, in my opinion, having a party causes more problems if this is against humanity. People will be divided to with and against, and each one of them will kill each other to defining their parties. All the parties do not have honorable goals like far right. Actually, one party who would like to accept killing million, actually, and thousands of souls in Syria and other countries. Okay, so instead of defending yourself as a supporter of the far-right party, define yourself as a human who cares about humanity without having a purpose. Go ahead.
Okay. Just to clarify, we did not support the policies of the right-wing parties. We are talking about the conflicts in the Arab region. By talking about the conflicts of the Arab region, we are talking about the Syrian crisis, the Libyan crisis, the Iraqi crisis, and the Yemeni crisis. And how is that related to the policies of conservatism and the anti-Muslim and the anti-globalization of the European Union?
So, this is clear. It doesn't need your question, actually. When we say Donald Trump, Marine Le Pen, against refugees, against immigration, against any sign of Islam and Muslims, that will not escalate the conflict in our region. When they want, I don't accept any refugees to enter my country because they are not representing my identity. So,
point of information.
Actually, the time's up. Say,
okay.
If you would like.
In the past decades, they were classified as anti-Semitism, and they now are
far right are
pro-Semitism.
actually
Justify
extremism. They are against the humans. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Wasim, the opposition whip, and I'm here. Is that working? شغال? And I'm here to make very clearly that my team here, he is really working and he is presenting a lot of things. Otherwise, the government team was claims all the time. We're gonna start with the Prime Minister when he said immigration to Arab is focused on the economic stuff and a lot of things we are here tonight to discuss. So let's start with the conflicts of the right, which is respond. For example, Donald Trump has all the time consider all the Arabic region are a terrorism. I don't know why is that. And what you still talking about Donald Trump and his policy?
A point of information.
Thank you, later. And moving on to leader of the opposition, when he said, like, and I quote, Trump winning, it's come from the people and his policy, and not from against the another country region. So his statement in the above of the table was the freedom. So he was talking about the freedom, his own people, university, his people conflicts all the time. First of that, there's talking a lot of extremist group you confixed in the Islam, and you mentioned before the Islamophobia, I think, Islamophobia, and how is your meaning about it in something called fear from another countries. So as adventure to me as a person, if I want to go a refugee, I will
point of information.
Thank you. I was just looking for a safety country, not to thinking about the policy. Moving on to Deputy Prime Minister, when he trying to make a sentence about the freedom, about all the time, amnesty exclusive, Mali, I don't know, about hijab or something. So we are talking about the hijab and talking about the freedom. So this is the comparative between two and each other. This is a hijab, a normal Muslim woman in every region, like an Arab or in Australia perhaps, it can choose what she wants and what she gonna wear. So it's the same. I'm losing my time. A Deputy Prime Minister, when he said he responds very powerful about the UK, France, and we can see the...
A point of information.
Here you are.
Thank you so much. Now, actually, I would like to just discuss with you the point that when you just mentioned the hijab thing, like, if you were the one who said that it's up to her to choose to put on the hijab or take it off, right? Is this what he said?
Exactly.
So the main question is that, don't you think that if she goes as what Marianne wants, and she goes as a refugee to France, where she will get forced to take off her hijab and follow and embrace a foreign methodology? This is the main question.
Okay,
Would you
thank
please just answer my
Thank
question?
you. Well, the
Thanks
thing is,
for
let's go
supporting
back.
us.
Let's go back from start. We begin. We are talking about another country. So we talking about the Donald, and you just mentioned Donald Trump about his policy. So I don't think so that in every single woman she can choose or not. And especially when you said Donald Trump policy, he just hates the Islam and he wants to affect the Arab region. Moving to my last argument here, my last speech here, because I'm just smashing, I don't know why. I would just would like to mention the clash of points when you said they was talking about the Donald, firstly, I don't know, and we just say that US and Donald Trump policy is just contained for his own country, not for us. And I think this is what, yeah, sure.
You keep saying that Europe is living in a different island. Are we living in an isolated island? Am I not affected by the decisions that are going to be made by the European Parliament?
Exactly.
Will they give us support? Will they fund us? Will Jordan even rely heavily on the funds from the European Union?
Thank
and
you.
the support from the European
Thank you. I'll just
Second,
respond for that.
Do you know that Donald Trump was supported by the far-right movements in France and UK, and some of the speakers were supporting his campaign for the elections? Do you know that?
Well, thank you for mentioning that. And allow me to say that in every freedom country, he have a lot of things to talk about. And if you mentioned that Donald Trump, he have a lot of things. And you remember closing with me, he said, thank you.